morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning Roundtable discussion. Today is Sunday, September 24th, 2017. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, in the United States of America. And this morning, Fairley will read our morning prayer.
O my God, I offer as a consecrated gift upon thine altar a heart dedicated to thy service, lips speaking only words of charity, love, and truth, thoughts striving to be only the true thoughts of the mind of God. Help me to endure unto the end, strong in the faith, powerful in the truth. All the influence that I can bring to bear, all the force of tongue or pen that is mine, I offer in thy service. May heaven help, consecrate, and accept.
Thank you. That's Mrs. Eddy, her prayer given at the Massachusetts Metaphysical College. And then from Miscellaneous Writings. We today in this classroom are enough to convert the world if we are of one mind, for then the whole world will feel the influence of this mind, as when the earth was without form and mind spake, and form appeared. Our subject today is reality, and the golden text is Psalms 119. Open thou mine eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. And before we get started, I'm going to have Florence. She was speaking to me about something this week about how she felt about people who were coming to our church. I need to call in for Uta. Okay, go ahead, Florence.
Yes, repeatedly, people who are calling are saying that they've been in Christian Science, some a long time, some from childhood and all that, and that they've had healings, and then sometimes it's a particular claim that doesn't seem to yield, and they don't understand why and all this. So it came to me that I think there's a searching going on even within Christian Scientists, that what is it that I need to know or understand to be able to, they will call it demonstrate. And I feel that from the testimonies that are given here, people have the same experience, that there is something else that they need. And I feel it when you've come here, it's a call to go the next step higher, to realize more that we are spiritual, as it's emphasized here over and over and over. And so it's wonderful that God has also given here at this church the different things that go on, the Bible studies, Roundtable, the forum, the magazines, and all that, for us to use during our trials. And the goal of it all is so that we can realize our spirituality, the individual spirituality, which in fact tells us then that all these things that come up are not real. And it's the only way that we can see ourselves through these things and help ourselves and help the world. So the verse from Luke 10:20 that rejoice, it says, notwithstanding in this rejoice not, that the spirits are subject unto you, but rather rejoice, because your names are written in heaven. Somehow it was coming to me that meant, it's not just the demonstrations that we've made, but to rejoice or to carry on this ongoing work and rejoice in it, that every trial that comes, it's an inspiring opportunity for us to realize more and more our spirituality and to know the unreality of the challenges that come. So I just wanted to share that because it's a frequent thing. Oh, I've had healings, but I don't understand why. But are we rejoicing? Because our eye is on the goal of realizing constantly that God is omnipotent, God is omnipresent, we are spiritual, and the more we are gaining that, we should continue to rejoice. And I know it's not easy. I know that. I mean, we've all been through and still going through. But not to forget the goal is not just overcoming the things that come up. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. So true. And, in the lesson this week, it applies in Science and Health 15, when understanding changes the standpoints of life and intelligence from a material to a spiritual basis, we shall gain the reality of life, the control of soul over sense, and we shall perceive Christianity or truth in its divine principle. This is what is happening as we grow here. It is changing your base from one of materiality to spirituality. And when that happens, great many other things happen as well. You're seeking the kingdom of heaven first, and healings do occur, and changes transpire in your life, tremendous changes. But that's why you're leaving that human base. As the lesson speaks about this week, you are rising above the mist of mortality. What's happening? And that is real Christian Science healing. Nothing else is. And how wonderful it is to begin to understand the principles of why you are healed. And thank you, Mike, for what he wrote on the forum, because he says that you can tell by their fruits ye shall know them. You can tell if this is true by how you feel and the healing that begin to happen. That's how you test it. And if you don't feel that's right or true, then fine, go somewhere else. But I know for me, it had a tremendous effect on me. And I'd never seen Christian Science practice like it was here in this church. Okay, before I go any farther, I wanted to pick someone to read our prayer for next week. Any volunteers, or shall I?
I'll
read it.
Okay, that was 2. 3, okay.
Well, that'll be for the next 3 weeks then.
Okay, for the next 3 weeks. Let's hear those voices again. Elizabeth, okay. Elizabeth, you do it next week.
I'll do it the next one.
And then Florence, the following. And who was there a third? Okay, well, we have the next 2 weeks then. Thank you. Okay, I want someone to read the responsive reading this morning. Any volunteers for that?
I will.
Okay, Jeffrey. Go ahead, Jeffrey. You'll be next, whoever that was, Suzanne? No, the responsive reading. And speak up so we can all hear, or they can hear.
Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Great earthquakes shall be in divers places, famine and pestilences, fearful sights, and great signs that there shall be from heaven. There shall not an hair of your head perish. Your patience possess ye your souls. There shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and stars, upon the earth, distress of nations, with perplexity. Sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear, for fear, for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. The powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. when these things begin to come to pass. And look up, and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away.
Thank you. I have to say, when I read that this week, I thought, my goodness, it sounds like the headline. So I want to get into it because this is why we watch. I think maybe people have been saying for a long time now, it's the latter days. Many of you wrote on the forum about the responsive reading as well. I would also like to read one other thing, and this is from Matthew 24:22. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. What does that mean? He's talking about all of this stuff.
Those who are stuck with God,
Sorry, say that again?
those who have stayed with God, who have depended on God.
Okay.
Those who see reality as, of God, the kingdom that is harmonious, those who see the truth about it all, of course, then it's shortened. All the calamities are not real. They see through them.
Thank you. Carol?
That's kind of what I was going to say, that if we do our work and stay faithful to the truth, it will shorten it, it will lessen it, and it will eventually give up.
Thank you. Who is the elect?
The remnant?
Yes. Who just said that? Karen? Yeah, the remnant. Carol?
Those who are working, the faithful workers.
Even in Mrs. Eddy's time, when there were thousands and thousands of people in her church and the churches were growing, what did she say about those who were working?
That there were few?
Well, only a very small percent who knew how to work. So, this is the grave importance of what we are doing. And as Florence said, it is seeing through the mist. This week's lesson brings out the mist to the reality of things. So, let's go through. We'll go through because, as I said, many of you wrote about this week. In your patience possess ye your souls. Linda, you wrote about that. You want to summarize it a little bit, or what that meant to you?
Well, really what it meant to me was that it was persistent and keep going. To me, it was, I have a tendency to try to get ahead of myself. And I felt kind of a staying power and possess your souls. It was really, to me, staying focused and not reacting and being patient, and the patience that's taught here. But it's a special kind of patience, an active patience. And to me, it was a very powerful statement because you can't be moved by all the stuff you see.
That's right, because if you are, you become part of the problem. You see it as a reality. But then the other extreme is where, and I've seen so-called scientists do this too, where they ignore it or say, oh, it's just animal magnetism, it doesn't exist. Well, that's too glib, as we read yesterday, the Bible study. That's too glib. It's got to be the proper sense of feeling the danger and handling it, seeing its nothingness, the mass mesmerism. Thank you, Linda. And then,
so at the end of it, on verse 28, it is said, when these things come to pass, Look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Lifting up your heads is what we're talking about.
That's right. Lifting it up above the mist. Florence, you wrote on that. I don't know if you want to say anything more about it.
Well, the same thing, really, that I think the last 2 weeks also we've been talking about lifting up, looking up, and that's the only thing that helps us to see clearly. The correct view is above the mist. So it's always lifting up. And what I was thinking about the redemption, I mean, the redemption is here. God's love is right here all the time, but it's up to us. When we lift up, do we see it or do we feel it? So it's not something that is kept away from us. It's here. Those who are lifting up are feeling it, are being redeemed, are being given the opportunity to see correctly.
And this is bringing in the millennium. As I read from Miscellany a few weeks ago, it comes individually, but as we do it individually, we are also helping all mankind, lifting them up. If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. Thank you. And then about Parthens wrote about the sea and the waves roaring, and he quoted Mrs. Eddy's hymn, "For earth's trouble, anger, sea. I see Christ walk. Come to me and tenderly, divinely talk." We had that actually as a watch message a few weeks ago. But I'd also, I guess, Linda, if you could read what he wrote, what Martha Wilcox said.
Yeah. So he quoted from an article called "Overcoming by Obedience" by Martha Wilcox. Quote, "Enoch proved this. Enoch saw no evil or sin. He saw the appearance, so-called matter, and formless mist that flees or dissolves before the light of sun. He so focused the penetrating rays of omnipotent truth upon his seeming material selfhood that it dissolved and vanished from human view. By so doing, Enoch lived and moved and had his being in God, and experienced the consciousness of eternal life. Thus must all mankind do to live. There are not two kinds of reality, one to be overcome and the other to endure forever. But it is through the understanding of truth that we overcome the misconception of the one and only selfhood here and now." End quote.
Thank you. Any questions on that? There's not two realities, just one.
I do have a question, and if this is an appropriate time, then shelve it, please.
Okay.
My question is, how much do we need to know about the underlying material? In other words, with the example of the waves, is it important to know that it's, for example, earthquake or wind? Because when the whole thing with a hurricane, and you brought out that it was animal magnetism, not the weather that we were handling when it comes to a hurricane, it really changed the way I worked. It changed the way it affected me, so I knew that was the correct thing, and I wasn't handling it properly because it affected me physically, and then it was straightening out with practitioner help by understanding. So my question is, again, how much do we need to know about the material state of things, if anything?
Well, we have the two types of scientists again, those who stick their heads in the sand and don't want to know anything. That's not right. You need to know. Usually you can tell as you grow in science how much you need to know. For myself, usually headlines are enough. If I feel like God directs me to knowing more than that, I will investigate things. And he'll tell me even if the headlines are true or not, or if they're propaganda, or many times it's
overstated.
Overstated, yes.
Traumatized.
Yeah, thank you. Traumatized. Make it sound worse than it really is. So here again, your spiritual sense is going to come into play on this. But you do need to know, Mrs. Eddy was well informed on the issues of the day. And I think it's in Lessons of the Seventh Day, or one of those books, where it says that she didn't even necessarily have to read about it, that she just knew. She was that advanced. She knew what was going on in various parts of the country. And you'll get to that too, where you feel it. You feel it. So, anyone else who wants to answer that? It's a good question.
Well,
thank you.
I know for me, years and years ago, I used to read a lot about the news, and then I just got to the point I knew I didn't have anything to offer, so I stopped reading. But after coming here and learning about watching, I realized I had to look a little bit. So now I just look enough until I get to the point where I'm like, oh, I have to watch about this.
Yes.
And then I stop, and then I watch.
That's it. You don't take in any more than what you can handle. And I spoke a few weeks ago about some people who just get so engrossed in it and reading and checking and all these things on the internet. I mean, as I said, there's no end to mortal mind scenario. That's way too much. And here we've learned in a watch, it's 10%. Well, what is it?
10 to 1, I think.
Yes,
you said.
that's what it was. 10 to 1, 10 affirmations to the 1 denial. When I used to do a watch, I used to do the 10 denials and 1 affirmation. I remember how horrified I was when we had to get up and give oral watches in our classes. I thought I'd written a really good watch, and I was really shot down. It was a terrible watch. I went on and on about everything that was wrong, and then I ended up with, well, God is omnipotent and never made it. Sat down. And everyone felt very depressed, including myself. Mrs. Eddy, in I believe it's Miscellaneous Writing, there's an article called Watching versus Watching Out. It's a very good article in which she says that. You don't make a reality of the era. That's not watching, and you might as well not watch if you're going to do that. So, you hear something negative and you handle it. Go ahead.
I was going to say what both of you said about that makes a lot of sense, that then one uses the spiritual perception to know how much one needs to know. One example that just came across was that I snooped in my wife's mail, who was a veterinarian, and the letter was about corporate acquisitions of veterinary practices has become a big thing, and it made me realize that what happens in the veterinary already happened in the human practice, and so it's a corporatization, is the way they termed it here, of the medical community is underlying this whole mess there. Now it's moving to the animal side. I just found fascinating.
Well, they can't be the third leading cause of death without removing their legal culpability. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very sobering statistic that Jeremy's given us about the medical.
Yes, and I agree, and so it isn't just a lack of knowing the difference between medical practice, materia medica, and Christian Science, for example. Now I see that the underlying thing comes back to that basic greed of money, that it's all about money and to heck with the results, which adds up to what you just said.
Now, and remember, there is some of that, but there is also what? There are many very fine and dedicated people in the medical profession. We must make sure we acknowledge that. Mrs. Eddy did.
She said we'd have to protect them in the end.
Yes. There are many,
Well,
and you got to know it in your heart too. You've seen more dedicated, unselfish people in the medical profession than those who call themselves Christian Scientists. So don't ever forget that. This is what we raise up and understand to be true. The other, that is a carnal mind, and it's down the line with all professions: greed, competition, jealousy, hate. There's always the opposite. So
that's exactly what my wife said, was that the problem is that the veterinarians come out of, and medical people come out of school now with so much debt that they fall into a corporate practice, and then they can't practice the way they want. They have to follow the corporation line, which so that's why I was kind of curious, how much of that does one know? I mean, for me, it's very helpful, but is that too much and overload, or it depends on the person?
Well, if you get into that too much, then there's no solution. It's just a horrible mess. And there again, that's the Adam dream. There's no solution. So then they're in debt, and then they can't get out, and then they have to go to unfair practices. All of that. There's just no end. So then it's too far. All right.
Well,
that is not the truth about any profession. And all professions come under this malpractice. Musicians, engineers, you name it. It's got the opposite. This is the unreality that's not the truth, that appears true, but it is not.
Well, the overwhelming high prices and the amount of medicines and all the advertising about medicines is what seems to be the worst thing about medicine, the medical profession now.
Well, and that, again, the carnal mind, all of that. And also, I mean, I'm not advocating seeking materia medica as solutions for anything. But all of that is the carnal human mind, having another God. But keep it that way. Keep it pure and simple. Don't get it complicated. Everything has its suppositional opposite. Mrs. Eddy wrote an article in Miscellaneous Writings called Spirit and Law. I'm going to read a little to you because it's very appropriate for now. The distinction between that which is and that which is not must be made by mind and as mind. This is what we were just talking about. Law is either a moral or an immoral force. Is it coming from God, or is it coming from the carnal mind? The law of God is the law of spirit, a moral and spiritual force of immortal and divine minds. The so-called law of matter is an immoral force of erring mortal minds, alias the minds of mortals. Then, this so-called force or law at work in nature as a power, prohibition, or license is cruel and merciless. It punishes the innocent and repays our best deeds with sacrifice and suffering. It is a code whose modes trifle with joy and lead to immediate or ultimate death. It fosters suspicion where confidence is due, fear where courage is requisite, reliance where there should be avoidance, a belief in safety where there is the most danger. Our master called it a murderer from the beginning. It doesn't take much to figure out who's who and what's what in this, okay? Okay, then, our great ensample, Jesus of Nazareth, met and abolished this unrelenting false claim of matter with the righteous scorn and power of spirit. When through mind he restored sight to the blind, he figuratively and literally spat upon matter, and anointing the wounded spirit with the great truth that God is all, he demonstrated the healing power and supremacy of the law of life and love. What goes on? What we're talking about, the reality, the unreality. What are you claiming to be true? And when you get into the other and how everything's wrong and our systems are all wrong, yeah, the material human systems are all wrong. The atom dream is all wrong. So you don't need to go very far into it to just spit on it. That's what it says. You spit on it. And we spend 10 to 1. So get back into the truth of it, because you're not helping it when you're just indulging in what's so wrong. But there's one thing. Let's see, where are we now? I wanted, Luann, do you want to read what you wrote from True Vision, or do you want Linda to read it?
I can read it.
Okay, go ahead.
All of what I wrote on the forum?
Just the quote from True Vision.
Oh, okay. Through spirit, I see all things rightly, clearly, correctly, distinctly, spiritually. This gives me discernment, so that I differentiate between one idea and another, also between true and false. This firmament of spirit gives me perception, perceptiveness, perspicacity. It opens the eyes of my understanding. It shows me what is real and what is unreal. That's from John Morgan, some notes on True Vision.
Thank you. That was a wonderful addition to the forum. So this is what's it about. Where is our vision? This is what this lesson is about. Open your eyes so you can behold the truth. What do you know to be true about all these things? And also, and maybe Linda, you can do this, but there were quotes from, it was Citation 4 in Science and Health from Ray. She quoted from The Way about rising up from the mist. The two quotes from The Way. You can find them.
The first one from The Way was, this is by Mrs. Eddy, quote, "To strike out right and left against the mist never clears the vision, but to lift your head above it is sovereign panacea," end quote. And then the second part that she quoted was, quote, "Physician, heal thyself. Let no clouds of sin gather and fall in mist and showers from thine own mental atmosphere. Hold thy gaze to the light, and the iris of faith, more beautiful than the rainbow seen from my window at the close of a balmy autumn day, will span the heavens of thought," end quote.
Thank you. So that's how you judge, Mike. Don't beat out against the mist. You rise above it.
I just want to say that you all have completely and satisfactorily, spiritually answered that question, so thank you very much.
Welcome. Well, this is, such a good lesson on today's what's going on, and the firmament, of course, being our understanding, to be able to see clearly the truth of being, not get down in the muck. You should know in your own heart when you're getting in the muck, because you're not going to start feeling so good. Emotionally, physically, mentally, in every way. I'd like, what are we to do in our watching and in our praying about these dictatorships, these wicked dictatorships who are committing genocide? Certainly don't want to have a nuclear war. What are we to do? And believe me, you are the ones that are going to have to do it. Okay? So that's why I want to know what your metaphysics are. Just say it doesn't exist?
Isn't that evil to the lake of fire?
Thank you. And this comes from the kindest person on earth. I hope you all heard that. Someone who wouldn't. And you see, when you get the right concept of it, you can say it, and no, you wouldn't hurt a slave. But the evil must destroy itself. And you've got to work with that vigor and vengeance, not vengeance. Vengeance is mine, that's the word. Vigor and, yes, conviction, power, authority, dominion, yes. Goes back on itself and destroys itself. Now, I love this, too. We quote it often. It's in Science and Health, page 243. Truth, life, and love are a law of annihilation to everything unlike itself. Unlike themselves, because they declare nothing except God. So, this is why we work with the synonyms of God daily, for yourself and for the world. Everywhere truth, life, and love exist, what is happening, according to this statement?
Annihilating evil.
It is annihilating evil. We are to know that. And of course, truth, life, and love exist where?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. This problem can be taken care of. It's effectively dealt with in metaphysics without lifting a pinky. But we have to know it, we have to work with it, and we've got to see this power encompassing the world. It has to be. Have Dale visiting from Virginia. Dale, glad to have you.
seat right over here.
She's going to sing with us this morning.
I saw something in the blue book that I'd like to share. It was page 91. If anyone has the old blue book, it says, "Do not be discouraged when you see a man apparently acting much worse than ever before, but know that he is growing better, for the very error that besets him will drive him out," emphasized, "out of the false sense and destroy the error."
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So, and so we mustn't be dismayed over the chemicalization that we see going on. This is a good thing. It's a good thing. It does not mean that error is in control and God isn't. God is always in control. It's coming out and it's being exposed. And as we know, error exposed is what?
The first destroyed.
And
Destroys itself.
yes, remember that, and do not be dismayed. And that's what this responsive reading is saying also. So we work, and we don't forget to work. We give our whole lives to this. You know, as I've said, you think, oh, you want to have a nice time with your family or go to Disney World or whatever. There won't be any Disney World, honey. Okay? It's not going to be there. What did you read, Florence, about the year 2100?
Oh, it's in the blue book too. I don't have it here, but it's like when everything will be, I think the mortal sense of things is what she's saying. It will all be destroyed.
Well, as I remember, it's scientists will either have done their work or not. So, and I read it. It was interesting because I read it somewhere else this very week that the mathematicians figured out also the year 2100 that something was going to happen to the physical universe at that point. Because that's what they're all predicting. You know, they're all predicting all of this tragedy. So we rise above that myth, and we work consistently in our watches, and we don't fail to work. And as you do that, you're not just doing it for everyone else. What are you doing?
do it for yourself.
You are.
I know. I certainly feel a lot better after watching.
That's right. Jeremy loves to watch. He feels better after watching, and that's why all of us here should love to watch, because you do feel better. You can tell I really nailed that one.
Well, if you are stronger, then that means you're more able to help others.
Absolutely. And so, if perhaps you think your watches aren't that good, well, keep at it. They'll get better. Figure out what's not quite right and work at it so that you get where you are feeling that you're doing it. And mainly, you start with the absolute. You handle the error. Then you end with the absolute. The end of your watch, you should feel better. And if you don't feel better, you haven't done your watch.
I know when I first started watching it, I think I tried to do too much at once, and then I started breaking it down more to smaller chunks. That helped. So,
yeah. And, what we give you in our watching they're just, as I call them, springboards. Many of you get various ideas on what to watch for. I know Fairley has told me many times she always watches for prisoners. What she feels in her heart she wants to pray about. It's wonderful. We should. Maybe you feel like you need to pray for our soldiers, our military. Maybe there's something else that's coming to you, or maybe it changes day to day, which is kind of what happens to me. But however it comes to you, that's God speaking. They're going to sing it's a Christian song today at our service. And it's called Here I Am, Lord. Ah, thank you. Well, I will let Dale read it for us.
We're going to sing the first and third verses. I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry. All who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them. My hand will feed. Finest bread I will provide. Till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord. If you lead me, I will hold your people in my heart. Thank you.
It makes me cry. Do you hear the Lord calling in the night? Is your reply, I am here, Lord? Our people, just as Moses heard the cry of his people, they are crying. Those in the storm, in the prisons, they're crying. Who will I send? God asked. So is your answer, I am here, Lord? It's a beautiful sentiment. And I meant to have a copy of the words so I could read it today, and I didn't, and Dale brought it. And that is how this church operates. When there is a need, it is met. Somehow or another, someone comes up with it because they are hearing God's voice. So if you are hearing God calling in the night, get the sensitivity where you do. And don't be dismayed, because I know many of you will say, oh, I couldn't sleep all last night. Well, that's okay. The Lord calling in the night, who will he send? Thank God that there is a remnant who is willing to do this work, to be up all night if need be, so these cries will feel the presence and power of God Almighty, who is everywhere. There's no greater work. Thank you, Dale. Okay, any questions? I was going to go on to a few more things in science and health. Suzanne, what did you have to say about the Shekinah and the anchor? There.
Oh, let me.
What was your definition of Shekinah?
Find it here. Dwelling or settling of the divine presence, the Holy Spirit, the visible manifestation of the divine presence, the presence of God on earth, or a very holy place.
Thank you. An anchor?
That which gives stability or security, that on which we place dependence for safety.
Yes. So, as Eddie is saying, the nature of Christianity is peaceful and blessed, but in order to enter into the kingdom, the anchor of hope must be cast beyond the veil of matter into the Shekinah, into which Jesus has passed before us. And this advance beyond matter must come through the joys and triumphs of the righteous, as well as through their sorrows and afflictions. Like our Master, we must depart from a material sense into the spiritual sense of being. Here we are again, change of base. The change of base does not happen when we are skipping through roses. Sometimes it happens when we get bumped around a bit.
That's what she goes on to say. She says the sharp experiences of belief in the supposititious life of matter, as well as the disappointments and ceaseless woes, turn us like tired children to the arms of divine love, and then we begin to learn life and science.
Thank you. That's exactly it. That's why when these trying times, these tough times come, we should embrace them and know that we will get great good from them. As long as we're turning to our Father, it will work together for good. To you who love God, to you who are called according to His purpose. So never fear, and there's nothing to fear now. And now we have a time and opportunity to do this work and to hear God's voice calling to us and to help all those who need, great need. Some being tortured for being Christians. Do you hear that cry? If you do this work, and if you do it well, as we talked about yesterday, and thank you, Betty, for that Bible study, all of this is a state of beatitude. It's an attitude of blessedness because we are praying and working, and it brings us great joy, even through times of sorrow, because we will see the veil lifting, the mist lifting, see the reality of all things. So I'll have Gary read today. This is from Martha Wilcox's addresses on war.
History shows that every epoch has its spiritual values, and happy are we who discern the spiritual values of this present time. Referring to our present time, our textbook says, as material knowledge diminishes and spiritual understanding increases, real objects will be apprehended mentally instead of materially. Science and Health, page 96. Jesus set forth clearly and definitely what should be our attitude of thought in these latter days, and why we should have this attitude of thought. He said, "When these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads. Why? For your redemption draweth nigh." Our redemption from what? Our redemption from the false concepts, the veil which has darkened man's vision, and which is done away in Christ. Christ, the truth about all things, is our Redeemer, and our redemption is at hand. We do not look at the destruction of matter as the destruction of something, but as the passing away of the false material concept of substance. This false concept of substance hides the omnipresence of man and the universe of reality. How readest thou? How seest thou? Instead of viewing the present time with dismay, Christian scientists should assume their divine responsibilities. Each of us can and should assume the responsibility of handling the errors in his own thinking. We should do just this, as if we were the only one upon whom rested the responsibility for the correction to be made. In this way only do we work out our own salvation, and at the same time aid in working out the salvation of the world.
Thank you. Okay, we will go forward now better than before, and we will have a powerful service which will spread its healing to all mankind. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.